Hello, everyone. I'm Lorraine Nowlin, and I am the facilitator of WDI USA's Black Women's Caucus, and I'm also a member of the board of directors. And I have here with me Kristin Zebrowski, a wife, mother, and writer based in Georgia. She runs the popular subject Substack, The Peachy Perspective.
Thanks for having me, Lorraine.
Thanks a lot for agreeing to participate. So I've known you for years. Tell the audience a little bit about your background and how you came to activism.
Okay, so my background is in political science and public administration. I spent years in state government and academia doing regulatory compliance.
Mhm.
I've always approached policy by asking, does it work? Who benefits and who bears the cost?
Wow.
Didn't come to critiquing gender identity from the outside.
Hmm.
I was actually during grad school, I considered myself a progressive and fully embraced gender ideology. I even
Wow.
helped found a local chapter of a gender expansive organization. I genuinely believe that compassion meant affirmation.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, I know it's a big turnaround. Over
You've come a
time,
long
I
way.
I have over time I really noticed a pattern that whenever gender ideology conflicted with women's rights, which was in many areas, women
Mm.
were expected to give up something, their language, their sports, their spaces, their boundaries. And
Hmm.
I didn't fully allow myself to question those observations until I left my college town bubble.
Wow.
Yeah, once I
Wow.
did, I realized that it wasn't just about individual identities. There were clearly issues regarding public policy affecting women and girls.
Hmm. Speaking of gender identity ideology, your piece is called The Real FTM Holding the Line as a Black Mother in a World That Erases Women. Um, you speak about your outrage at the assault on language with respect to womanhood. Would you explain what that means for our viewers who don't understand what all of this means and why it's so critical?
hmm I think language is where culture changes first. The title actually came from a realization I had when I was pregnant. I would join first time mom groups, and every time I saw FTM, my brain
Mm,
immediately read it as female to male before remembering,
yes.
that this is a pregnancy group. So clearly that's not
Mhm.
what it's meant to be.
Right.
So that hesitation struck me because it symbolized something larger, that words, woman, mother, female, breastfeeding, even pregnancy, are treated as though they're exclusionary rather than descriptive.
Hmm. Oh, and by the way, for our audience, that piece is in the anthology She Holds the Line, Black Women Speak on Gender Ideology. I strongly encourage you to pick up a copy of that. So, what, in your opinion, is the root cause of sex rejection in young women?
I don't think there's one single cause. I think there are like so many and two big ones, but I think there are definitely recurring patterns that our
Hmm.
culture has become reluctant to examine.
Hmm.
Many young girls who reject their sex experience things like sexual abuse, domestic violence, lesbophobia, biphobia, social alienation, may
Hmm.
have autism, maybe gender
Wow.
nonconforming. And I think those experiences can make womanhood feel burdensome or frightening
Yes.
even.
Yes, I've actually noticed the same among the autism community, and it seems like there's such an exploitation in a population that's already, struggling to fit in a society that's not really built for them.
Yeah. I think gender
Wow.
ideology offers them an escape from womanhood and
Mm-hmm.
makes it seem like the solution to female suffering.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's powerful. Good point. Um, what has been your experience being open, online or offline, about your views?
Well, before I experienced censorship, I experienced self-censorship. By the time that I'd become gender critical, most of my friends came from progressive LGBTQ and social justice circles. So when Magdalene Burns passed away in 2019, I believe, her
Mm-hmm.
final request was that women speak up, using their names.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me realize that I was in a unique position since I was self-employed, that
Yes.
I could speak up, whereas other women who would risk their employment wouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
able to.
Wow. Um, Rest in peace, Magdalene Burns. Because of her work online, I found all of you. But that's a long story. Maybe
Same.
I'll get into it a little bit later. So how has motherhood impacted your advocacy?
So I'm a big sister. I've been a big sister all but 4 years of my life. So I always came at feminism advocating for female sex-based rights from a protective angle. However, becoming a mother has shifted that so much more into focus.
Hmm.
Before my daughter was born, I would often speak about making the world better for a hypothetical daughter at some point.
Yeah.
And now that she's here, the issues are no longer theoretical. When you
Mm,
carried a child, given birth, and breastfed, womanhood is even more of a lived reality that is so sex specific.
yes. It sure is. I know that I became a mother almost 17 years ago, and it definitely does change things. It makes, your advocacy more real. You know,
Hmm.
wow.
Exactly.
Um, Speaking of your daughter, she's very cute, by the way. You made a series of affirmative statements about your daughter's future and how you want her to navigate a culture that is shifting towards an abyss, so to speak. Which, if any, do you feel is the most critical?
The statement that she will not be shamed into apologizing for female biology.
Hmm.
Yeah, that feels especially timely after the Supreme Court's recent Title IX decision. The court recognized that sex is not an outdated concept or a matter of personal identity and
Wow.
remains the basis for protecting equal athletic opportunities for girls and women.
Mm-hmm.
But courts can only decide so much, or courts can only do so much. The law can recognize reality, but culture has to be willing to honor it as well. So I want
Mm-hmm.
my daughter to grow up knowing that her female body isn't something to apologize for, to
Mm.
explain away, that she shouldn't feel guilty for wanting female-only spaces, for acknowledging biological differences, or for using words like woman or mother the way that they're supposed to be used.
Wow. And again, since I've known you for a couple of years, I have no doubt that your daughter will be very assertive
Thank
in her belief, and that's great. I was particularly struck by your statement that compassion should not require you to deny reality. I loved that. What advice would you give to women in our circles that are faced with opponents attempting to use
you.
compassion to silence us?
I would want them to know and to tell other people that compassion and honesty are not opposites.
Right.
Medicine depends on accurate diagnoses, public policy depends on accurate definitions, healthy relationships depend on honesty. If compassion requires you to say things that aren't true, then eventually compassion and truth both go out the window. I
Mm-hmm.
also think that
Wow.
women need to stop accepting the premise that setting boundaries is cruel. Women have always needed boundaries for safety,
Mm-hmm.
for privacy, for dignity. Saying no is not hatred.
Mm-hmm. And this whole movement is just another attempt to violate women's boundaries. And not only that, but to guilt us into, allowing those boundaries to be violated. That's why we have to like really push back. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Yes.
What's next for you in terms of advocating for women and girls?
So becoming a mother didn't start my advocacy, but it definitely brought it full circle. It took concerns that I'd already had about women and girls and made them even more personal. So because now the girl whose future I'm doing this for has a
Mhm.
name and a face. That's
Yeah.
why I plan to keep writing. I'll continue exploring women's sex-based rights, language, motherhood, and the way our institutions and culture frames these issues.
Hmm.
I also hope to encourage more mothers to see themselves as advocates, not
Yes.
just go along to get along. You don't need a title or an organization behind you. You don't need a
Yeah.
certain level of education to defend women and girls.
Hmm.
Sometimes
Right.
holding the line simply means telling the truth in your own community, raising your children to be honest, and refusing to surrender language that has described women and girls for thousands of years.
Wow, thank that. That's absolutely powerful. Thank you for that. Do you have any final words for our viewers, particularly young women that might be, caught up in this mess and, not really knowing what to do next or how to stand up for herself?
I would encourage them to get themselves knowledgeable about radical feminism.
Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely it definitely connects dots that might
Yeah.
not otherwise be connected.
Yes. 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 Absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah,
Well, thank you very much, Kristin, for agreeing to interview. I had a wonderful time, and I just want to say that you're a wonderful speaker, wonderful writer, and I'm
thank
sure you'll do
you.
a lot more for women and girls.
Thank
For
you.
our viewers, if you would like to get a copy of She Holds the Line, the link will be just below, and also a link to Kristin's Substack, The Peachy Perspective. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for joining us.